Hey everybody, welcome back to Brainiac Baseball's 1969 Seattle Pilots What If Scenario. This is our end of May standings and league leaders video, in which we will also take a look at the upcoming amateur draft that's going to take place on June 9th right here. So we're going to spend probably a majority of the time on that in this video. We will also take a look at the actual 1969 draft and see who was drafted in the first round in real life. And then we'll scoot on back to the game here and take a look at what players are available. And we can take a look at their original baseball cards and a bunch of fun stuff. So it'll be good. This will probably be a longer video than normal. But, we're not going to spend as much time on the standings and league leaders as we normally would. So you'll see here that we went 15-12 in the month of April, and we were feeling pretty good about ourselves at that point. And then we've had in the past with the Detroit Tigers season replay, we've had the subsequent month, in this case May, usually equal out whatever the opposite is for the first month. So we went 15-12. I assumed we were going to go 12-15. We finished at 13-14 when we won the game earlier today, which was a pretty good game, a lot of fun. So this is officially 1/3 of the way through the season. We're 54 games in. 54 times 3 is 162. And so, we are 1/3 of the way through. As we flip over to June, you'll see here we have a couple of games to go against the Twins, and then we will actually play my Detroit Tigers for the first time all season. So that'll be fun, and then we have the draft. Of course, we have that's on June 9th, and then we have the All-Star game taking place in July on the 9th, and then we'll have the trade deadline, and then it's pushing on through to the playoffs. So let's take a look at the standings here first and foremost. Baltimore is the cream of the crop. They did go on to play the World Series and lose to the Mets. And as I mentioned in today's game, Minnesota did win our division, the West, in 1969, and then was swept by Baltimore 3-0. So so far it's really kind of going as planned. Oakland is tied with Minnesota, and we are hanging in there 2 games back. We have a batting average that is worse than the league average. We have home runs that are less than the league average, and we have an ERA that's higher than the league average. So somehow we are making this work despite not having a very good team. If you take a look here, you'll see we're 9 runs under, so -9 runs differential. So that makes our Pythagorean 26-28, 2 games under 500, and we're actually 2 games better. So we are playing better than our record. So that's all good news there. Let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the National League, of course. Hey, the San Diego's still sitting on 11 wins. They've lost 11 in a row. We have that San Diego Padres contest where you guess how many wins the Padres will get. And in return, the winner, the closest to that, without going over, will win a Dave Roberts, the first overall draft pick for the Padres, will win a Dave Roberts top signed contract from 1975. The original document that he signed with Topps. Pretty cool. Okay, so that's we have going on. Pittsburgh Pirates in first place. And look at this. Montreal, another expansion team. They are doing well in the East. 28-27. That's not going to last either, I don't think. The Dodgers are in first place in the West. So there you go. There's the standings. Let's go ahead and take a look at the league leaders. for the American League. We're going to do this relatively quickly. We're not going to hit all the finer points, but it looks like Ed excuse me, let me clear my throat here a little bit. Yeah, Ed Kirkpatrick leading the American League in batting average with a .327 batting average. There's John Roseboro. We just saw him today. He had a home run against us, .321. Yes, Bert Thurman. There's Pops, all in the top 10. Only 8 players in the American League through 54 games are over 300. I suppose that is somewhat accurate, although it alarms me on where we may end up with that at the end of the season. So Jerry McNerney just scooching in there at a .270 batting average. Let's take a look. We're just going to hit the highlights here. Who does lead in doubles in the American League? It's Lou Piniella with 18. No pilots in there, of course. Leading in ERA, Al Downing of the Yankees has a .170 ERA. There's Sudden Sam McDowell, Dave Boswell, Mel Stottlemyre, and the relatively unknown Gene Brabender almost threw a no-hitter in April in the 5th spot, and you can see it rounding out the top 10 there, all the way down to number 25, which is Tommy John. Okay, let's see. Games pitched. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I have to pat myself on the back a little bit here for the restraint that I've been showing with our terrible bullpen. I've actually been trying to get them to use multiple innings and not having to, go to the well every single game. Normally, of course, we do have 5, pilots represented here, but normally they'd be the first 5. We've only got 1 guy in the top 10. So that is kind of amazing. I'm not using like lefties as loogies. We're letting them pitch to righties as well, so that's kind of nice. Hits. Playing the hits. It's Reggie Smith with 64. For Boston, a lot of the players you might think are in there. Bob Bailey's been traded twice this year. From the Dodgers to the Tigers. No, I'm sorry. He was on the Expos. From the Expos to the Tigers to the Yankees. Still managing to hit. And Rich Rollins with 52. That's kind of surprising in the top 25. The only player. Okay, I kind of want to see who's been hit by pitch the most. Tom Silverio, there's Van Kelly, Mike Keegan. Okay, home runs. It is Sam Bowens still with 15. He did not get one against us. There's 3 Washington Senators in the top 10. 10 players with 10 or more. The most from Seattle is Tommy Agee, who went on a nice little tear there toward the end of the month where he had, 4 or 5 home runs in just as many games as a log. 2, 3, 4. So he had 4 in the last 6 starts, 7 games technically. Okay. So good job by him. There's your AL home run leaders. Innings pitched. I don't really care about that. On base percentage. Mike Epstein of the Senators. I'm surprised their record is not better. They are definitely crushing the ball, finding ways to get on base as well. Outfield assists. I always like to know who this is. Hey, Tommy Harper has 2, despite being one of the worst rated outfielders in the American League. So, but Sweet Lou's got 7. Jeez, that's amazing. Okay, OPS. Norm Cash of my Tigers. Tigers, I think, are in last place, we saw, right? But they're still have some players producing, and one of them is Norm Cash. Okay, RBI. Let's take a look at RBI. Jose Cardinal. Wow. Jose Cardinal of the Indians has 40 RBI through 2 months. The offense should not be that productive on any team in 1969. We are still technically in the year of the pitcher. We're coming off of that, so the stats should be still in the pitcher's favor. But a player like Jose Cardinal leading in RBI is kind of weird. Runners thrown out. Jerry McNertney's got 14. It isn't very often you see a personal manager, a human manager, lead in runners thrown out because we can't call pitch outs or anything like that. It just happens. And McNertney looking good. And Pavlitic has the worst arm. He's just thrown out in bulk. That's all it is for him. Well, yeah, what's the percentages? McNertney's at one point was 50%, down to 38.9. Pavlitic is below 30. And Bill Freehan, a really great defensive catcher. Wow, it's the last. Okay, runs scored. Reggie Smith. Tommy Harper there was in the 16th spot. We moved him to the cleanup role, though, so that he might not be as productive. Do you want to see who has the highest salary in the American League? There you go. Wait, is that right? Jerry Bell? No. What? No, these are our minor league draft people. What? Okay, so what? Okay, yeah, actually, in this case, this guy, Jorge Rubio, does have the highest salary. He was a free agent on the free agent market, signed by the Yankees for this whole year for $1 million. That is dumb. That is really, really dumb, but it did happen. He is the highest paid guy, and he is not pitching in the major leagues. Dave McNally is the highest paid player, $860,000. Okay. Moving on. Saves, sure, we want to know that. Dick Hall is tied with Mike Marshall with 11. And, a lot of these guys we don't even know. Shutouts? Camilo Pascual just threw that one-hit shutout against us, right? It was a shutout. Correct? Yeah. One hit, complete game shutout. He walked 4. All right. Marty Patton has the shutout, too. Good job by him. Steals. Bert Campaneris has 23 stolen bases. Tommy Agee with 15. And Tommy Harper, I believe he's below 50%. He's at 50%. We've all but stopped stealing with him. There's no point. It's like that one year where I had Ricky Henderson on the Tigers. There's no point in stealing if you're going to get thrown out. Okay. Strikeouts pitched. Al Downing with 93. How many innings? 93 and 95.1 innings. That's pretty impressive. Denny McLain. Earl Wilson. No. Buddy representing the Pilots. Triples. Frank Quilici's got 4 triples. Rich Rawls got 3. And Danny Walton's got 2. Who's a walking Mike Adams. This guy, he was a nobody in real life. And yet he's getting everyday duty as the left fielder for the Twins. And he's walked 45 times as a rookie. All right. Tommy Harper's on there. That's good. And wins. We'll look at wins real quick, of course. And Gary Peters of the White Sox. 9-3 through 2 months. That's a pretty good start to a season. 3 complete games, 1 shutout. I believe 1 was against us. So there you go. There is your American League leaders. We are just going to flip over to the National League, and you can just check out these guys out here. Wow, Bob Gibson has 10 wins already. in the NL. I have not done all the teams' baseball cards for the NL. In fact, I believe I've only done Pittsburgh. Yeah, Pittsburgh and Montreal are the only two teams I've done completely. There's Steve Rogers as a 19-year-old rookie, rocking it with the ERA. So I still have some work to do there. And now that I'm done with the 1980 Detroit Lions alternate history, I'll have a little bit more time in the evening to wrap some of those other projects up. Okay, let's take a look at the draft. I think this is the fun part for everyone. If you play this game, this has to be one of the things that you look forward to the most. I certainly do. It is one of the things that I find to be the most fun. I guess we're going to leave it right there. I like to sort by scouting because that tells me whether or not I'm spending enough money, toward my scouts to give me the right information. If we click on peak, it's not all that different than the scouting, but I don't know, I just feel like this is the most accurate way for us to kind of get an idea of who's available and maybe who we'll be able to take. So before we even start looking at the list, let's take a look and see who was actually drafted in the 1969 draft. Number one pick overall was Jeff Burroughs from the Senators, hitting 240 home runs in his career. If you scroll over here, this is on Baseball Reference, by the way. You can go in and you can go to choose the draft and pick the year and which round and all that. I find it fascinating that all the players are high schoolers with the exception of 3. And that kind of blows my mind, to be honest. Everyone was in high school. And, like our game, when we do these drafts, I'm sure you're more than well aware, although it says high school totals displayed, it doesn't, it does. I guess it does show on their player card. But these are all high schoolers. None of these players have been to college yet. So these players here in the list are not reflective of the players who are actually drafted that year. We might find a couple crossover guys, but for the most part, it's not how the game works, and that's okay. I'm okay. I actually like the fact that the game only uses players at the high school age level. I think it just helps you develop them within your roster. But there is a drawback, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back to the actual players here in the draft that happened in 1969. So number one overall draft pick was Jeff Burroughs, longtime Texas Ranger when the Senators moved to Texas. And I think he played for Atlanta a little bit too, but not a bust, probably better than most number one overall draft picks. He had a 17.7 WAR, which is pretty solid, and an OPS of almost 800. Again, pretty good for a 1970s hitter. Number two overall was J.R. Richard to the Astros. 107 career wins, career cut short due to a stroke. I love looking at the bonuses that they received. I find that kind of fascinating. Number three overall to the White Sox was a guy named Ted Nicholson, who never made it to the majors. If they did not make it to the majors, you do not have the link to click on here. So there are several players who did not actually get major league PT. So then a guy named Randy Sterling for the Mets, a pitcher, got a cup of coffee. The Angels drafted Alan Bannister, but they did not sign him. So he went back into the draft. I'm assuming he went to college and probably did not get drafted. A pretty okay career for him. Then Mike Anderson of the Phillies. He was a longtime Philly. made it into 721 games. Somebody named Paul Powell for the Twins, never heard of him. Terry McDermott for the Dodgers, never heard of. Don Stanhouse, drafted by the A's, but I think we remember him mostly with the Expos. Pirates drafted John Moreland, not a lot from him. Yankees drafted Charlie Spikes, who played for Atlanta and for the Indians. Over 2,000 at-bats, so that was a good draft pick. And then you had back-to-back picks by the Braves and the Red Sox that did not make it to the majors. A guy named Gene Holbert and Noel Jenke for Boston. And then Don Gullett, drafted by the Reds, had the most wins of any pitcher drafted in the first round for 1969. Then the Indians drafted somebody named Alvin McGrew, who did not make it to the majors. Then there's Roger Metzger, one of the few that went to college, drafted out of St. Edward's University in Austin. Had over 4,000 at-bats, only 5 career home runs, though. Youch. He did play a portion of his career in Houston, and of course the Astrodome was like a cavern. The Orioles drafted Don Hood, longtime reliever. Giants drafted Mike Phillips, shortstop. He had 1,700 at-bats. Tigers drafted somebody named Lenny Baxley, never made it to the majors. Unknown whether he's signed or not. There's like no documentation on this guy. This is exactly why the Tigers sucked. After like the 1972 season, they went right in the toilet and were horrible until Sparky came along. So, yeah, that's a good example right there. And then the Cardinals drafted a guy named Charles Minot, who did not play. Our Pilots, here come the 4 expansion teams. As I mentioned during today's game, the expansion teams drafted at the end of the first round and not at the beginning, therefore making it fair for the team that finished last year to get the first pick. So we drafted Stormin Gorman Thomas as a shortstop. He was a Gold Glove winner in center field. I would love to have him on our team, but I just don't think that's going to be possible. Expos drafted Baylor Moore, and Royals drafted somebody named John Simmons, a shortstop. And finally, the Padres drafted our first baseman, Randy Elliott. He played for the Padres and for the Giants. Didn't get too much there. The best player in the first round was J.R. Richard, 22.2 WAR. And then Gorman Thomas with his 268 home runs, more home runs than Jeff Burrow, was number 2 with WAR. So, there's no Hall of Famers on this, right? I mean, nobody went to the Hall of Fame in the first round. I believe it says it over here, whether they were in this column, if they were a Hall of Famer. But there was none, and we're not going to go through every round, but we'll just take a look at the second round just to see if anybody did any better here. So here's the second round of the draft. And yeah, there's very few players that made it. Stan Poppy, Joe Nolan, some guy named Mike Rogodzinski, okay. Tommy Sand, Leo Foster, Rick Miller, Larry Gurrow. Larry Gurrow, good pitcher. So anyway, that was what happened in the actual 1969 draft in the first round. If you were curious, I always like to see when I do my draft. I've never showed this before today, but I like to go and see who was actually drafted that year and kind of get a feel for where the league was headed. So let's go and take a look here at the draft for 1969. We are just going to click on the first guy here, and we will scroll through, and we will do this relatively quickly so you can see. Now, what I've done, and I have to do this every year, which is just mind-bendingly frustrating. But I make sure that they have their baseball card, which is something I enjoy to do. But I also make sure that their primary position is correct. Like I go down each list and I click on the name, which will take you to Baseball Reference. And I always make sure that they are a first baseman as their primary position. If they also played left field, great. The game is usually pretty good about getting secondary positions correct, but not always. One of the things that really just burns my biscuits is that when I go into the edit player part, and as I'm trying to do here, if you click on edit player, it'll go in here and it'll show you their position. You'll see primary position, first baseman. I had to change that, or I might have had to change that. But you just do a little scrolling and it'll say rookie position, left field, best position, first base, veteran position, first base. Well, as a rookie, maybe he did play left field, or maybe he played left field in the minor leagues. That is something that this game looks at in the design, is what did Mike Hargrove do in the minors as a position player? And we're going to look at it here. I'm not sure why maybe because I'm recording, it's just taking so long to pull up the stats here, but I'm trying to look at his minor league stats, and it doesn't seem to want to cooperate here. It's still thinking, so it's going to take a minute. But I do want to show you this so you know. Like I tell you guys all the time that I had to go and change his primary position. And I want to show you why, if the game would just allow me to pull this up. I don't know why it's taking so damn long. Let's try to just redo it here. Oh, this is his managerial. Well, come on, man. This is fascinating, I'm sure. There's his major league stats and his minor league stats. Maybe I clicked on manager stats. Forget it. Oh, here we go. Oh, no, it's his major league. That is really... Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, he did play 2 years. In the minor leagues for Texas. Okay, so we're going to scroll down and look at his fielding in the minor leagues. He was a first baseman. When he was called up to the majors in 1974, he played 91 games at first, 6 at left field, and these are the games that he started. But why does the game think he was a left fielder? I have no idea, but that's what it does. It will throw him as a left fielder, and that is extremely annoying to me. So I go through and I compare that and I change it. Now, if it just so happens to be a position, like let's say Mike Hargrove played shortstop in real life, but it didn't reflect it here, I can change it to shortstop, and while he's in the minor leagues, he will develop that skill. It just may take longer, but I can't control that. Okay, that's how crazy I am about like trying to make this, as realistic as possible. Okay, let's move on. So Mike Hargrove appears to be the best rated player available. A pitcher named Max Leone. So, when you choose your team's scouting, the amount of money you spend toward your scouting, it will change how your draft looks based on the scouting rating here. So Max Leone is probably not the best rated, scouted player in the game, but that's what the game makes you think based on what you've spent for scouting. So the point of that is that if you didn't know baseball, if you were somebody who didn't know this era of baseball, And Max Leone or Bob Babcock, was the highest peaked player in the game. You might be drafting him first overall if you had the first pick, and he may or may not turn out to be good. I mean, he could just be a washout. So there's Max Leone in his Braves uniform. Since these are all new players to the game, I'm using their rookie baseball card. And if they had one of those rookie cards that had like a quadrant of 4 players, I tried to use the player's next card where they were the only player on it. If there is a 4-quadrant players card, then that's because it maybe was the only card they even had. So there's Max Leone, if you're wondering. Number 3 is Bob Babcock. You see there with, I suppose that might be Texas represented. It's a minor league baseball card. We've got Enrique Oromo, played most of his career in the Mexican League. This is his rookie card for the Mariners. There's Mike Cubbage, pretty damn good third baseman, great defensively, had a little bit of power. Bill Parsons, originally a Brewer, so maybe he was drafted by the Pilots. I don't know that for sure, but no Brewers until 1977 in our game. There's Don Gullett, so there we go. So Gullett must have come up. Well, he was drafted as a high schooler, right, out of high school. So that's going to be properly represented. That's a 1971 rookie card for Don Gullett. That's cool. There's Bert Blyleven. Every time I've ever had Blyleven in a sim, he's always been really great. So there's Bert Blyleven. He might be a good first-round pick if he's there. There's Stormin Gorman Thomas. We like him. As we mentioned, he was drafted by the Pilots in the first round. There's another Pilot, Rob Ellis. Dave Winfield. 3-sport guy, 2-sport guy. But there is a rookie card for the Padres. Steve Foucault, future Detroit Tiger. Senor Smoke Aurelio Lopez. I mentioned this before in one of our games that there's only been 3 players in the history of baseball named Aurelio. Aurelio Lopez, Aurelio Rodriguez, and Aurelio Montenegro. And all 3 were killed in car accidents, and 2 played for Detroit. Jerry Bell, another Pilots player, perhaps. Mike Flanagan of the Orioles is available to us. Dennis Leonard, all-time wins leader for the Royals. Bill Madlock, Mad Dog. You see here, third baseman. He's a third baseman. Rich Gossage, Goose, there in the White Sox uniform. Hall of Famer. Vern Rule, Detroit Tigers pitcher. He was drafted. He is from Metro Detroit, and I've said it before. I went to high school with his niece. Or middle school, I should say. There's Bob Jones of the Angels. Carlos Lopez for the Mariners. Frank Estrada did not have a Major League Baseball card. I had to find a picture of him. And so one of the things I love about this game, as there are still a couple things that I really enjoy about it. One of the things is that he does, the creator of this, does add players who were drafted in the 1969 draft who did not make it to the major leagues. So maybe Frank Estrada was one of those guys. I'm not entirely sure, but he's there. Celerino Sanchez, pitching for the Yankees. Jim Slayton, Brewers, also maybe Seattle Pilots. Mike Willis. We got Gary Ryerson. We've got Cy Acosta. There's one of those 4-quadrant cards. This one is of Rick Henninger, who is a Texas Ranger here. This was the only baseball card he had, and so he shares it with some other schlubs. And so, here's a guy who played 1 year, had a cup of coffee in the majors, and yet he's got an overall peak of 86. So that's the cool thing about this game. Maybe Rick Henninger will get a long career in the majors. We'll see. There's Leon Roberts, Detroit Tiger. Not the Dave Roberts that were giving away his Topps contract. Dave Parker, one of my all-time favorite players. I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame personally. I would love to draft him. That would make me very happy. Here's a guy named Jim Kremel, high school, and he does have, 2 years in college. That's amazing. Now, he never played in the majors, so he does not, or maybe he did not have a card anyway, which is why he's not represented. But so the game does include high school and college. That is new. That's very new. There's Glenn Abbott. We just saw him on that 4-quadrant card. Played for Detroit, our World Series year in '84. Blake Green, I don't know you. Stranger Danger. Ron Pruitt. Now, Ron Pruitt, catcher. Ron Pruitt, right fielder. If you look at, this is the example I want to show you, I guess. If we look at Ron, and hopefully this loads up a little bit quicker, you'll see he was primarily an outfielder, a pinch hitter, and then a catcher from Flint, Michigan. Went to Michigan State. If you scroll down and look at his fielding, here we go. In his first year in the majors, he was a catcher in 1975, started 4 games, and played 1 game in left field. But if you looked at his primary positions, he played in the outfield 126 games, 63 in right field, 61 in left field, 48 as a catcher. And so what I did was I gave him the right field job because he started the most games in that position. Now, he is still rated highest as a catcher, and so he probably will play some games as a catcher for whatever team he gets drafted for. But in reality, he will most likely, as he improves his defensive rating, become a right fielder, or maybe he just DHs. I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of what I want to find out. So there you go. Okay, there's a guy named Bob Hansen, a DH. This guy was only a DH in the major league. This game thinks he's a first baseman, which he, in his baseball card, does show him as a first baseman, and he is rated as a first baseman. But he is a primary DH, and by the time this guy makes it to the major leagues, DH position will be available. Tom Brown. We've got Mike Anderson. We just saw him on that first-round draft. A right fielder for the Phillies. Dave Friesleben? I don't know. For the Padres there. Dick Ruthven, good pitcher. Eddie Solomon for the Braves. I love these old Braves uniforms. I like it when they do the throwbacks. When you see those uniforms now. Cesar Cedeno is available to us. He is a center fielder, but he did play a lot of games at first base later in his career. Dwight Evans, one of the best defensive right fielders of all time, one of the best arms. Game doesn't reflect that, but maybe by the time he gets to the majors, that'll be available. Steve Ontiveros, the third baseman, is there. Frank Ortenzio, I think a lifetime minor leaguer. John Stearns, bad dude, just passed away earlier this year. Highly rated catcher. We got Royal Stillman out there in left field, represented by the Sox. John Tamargo, catcher. John Tamargo did not, despite this being 1969, he did not make it to the major leagues until 1980. So sometimes you just got to wait. Bob Sheldon of the Brewers. We've got Dave Moats, Tom Robson. No baseball card for him. This was as a manager in the minor leagues. Ken Kravick of the White Sox. We've got Joe Simpson, Mariners represented there. There's Don Stanhouse here with the Rangers. So that must have been the team he actually got drafted by. Oh, no, he was drafted by the Senators, then, I guess. Larry Alenes, never heard of him, but he's got a baseball card. And a rated 84, so who knows? Derek Bryant, represented by the A's. Joel Youngblood on the Reds. Third baseman. It says outfield, but he played more games at third base than anywhere else. Steve Lawson, starting pitcher, right there on the end on the Rangers. There's Baylor Moore. We saw him in the first round draft for the Expos. Mitchell Page played a long career, but primarily a DH. Buddy Bell, third base, of course. Horace Speed, center field. Charlie Spikes, we did see him there. He is on the Indians. Darryl Thomas, second base for the Padres. Jim Wolford, Royals. Butch Alberts. Got Butch Alberts in a can, let him out. Stan Thomas, starting pitcher. The John DeQuisto of the Giants. Adrian Devine. Greg Minton, minor league card, but he was drafted by the Giants. Jackson Todd of the Mets. And there's Jeff Burrows. So Jeff Burrows, the actual number 1 overall draft pick, is in this draft. But rated an 83. So, he might not, he's definitely not a number 1 overall pick. Dan Driesen, first baseman for the Reds, big red machine that period. Ike Hampton, catcher, played for the Angels. There's Butch Hobson, third baseman. There it is, guys. Here's Dave Robert. I hope you got your hot dogs because this is all about the mustard. That is his rookie card, Topps Gold Cup card even. And this is the guy which we are giving away his Topps contract that he signed, the actual document. Pretty cool. And he's got a good rating, but defensively there was never a spot. We covered him already. Jimmy Sexton, the big sexy. Shortstop. Actually, Richie Sexton was the big sexy. Tom Spencer. Gary Thomason. James Capehart. These are now when we see players like this, they didn't make it to the majors, or they just didn't have a card. Clement Sanders. We do see more of them as the lower we go. There's Doug Alt, played for the Blue Jays. Here's another quadrant card with Steve Barr right there. That was his only major league card. Andy Hassler, Dan Spillner, Tommy Cruz, Mike Hart. There are so many Mike Harts in this era that I had to make sure I got the right Mike Hart. Benny Ayala. He went to Baltimore. There's Alan Bannister. So he is in this draft, but he did not actually get drafted in real life, but he'll get drafted faux show. Orlando Gonzalez, played for the A's 1 year. Ed Ott, pretty decent catcher, defensively anyway. Mike Vale, couldn't hit. Some guy named Bill Droge. Bob Baylor, looking pretty young there, right fielder for the Orioles. Mike Cosgrove in the 1975 cards. These are some of my favorite cards from this era where Topps it really started getting a little bit more vibrant with their colors. Even color schemes that didn't actually match their uniforms, But I love the 1975 cards. There's Larry Harlow of the Orioles. Larry President, never heard of him, but he was a real guy. I looked it up. Ed Ricks, again, another minor leaguer. Bob Coluccio of the Brewers. Paul Dade. There's Randy Elliott, last pick in the first round for the Padres in real life. Rufino Linares. We got Gary Martz. I had to dig up some old black and white photocopied picture. Some guy named Gary Barakat. Elvin McGrew. Okay, we saw Elvin McGrew as one of the players drafted in the first round that didn't make it to the majors. So I think that's cool. Like that part is something really awesome that this guy will get a chance to get drafted and maybe have a real career. That part I enjoy. Claude Renfro. Jim Hughes for the Twinkies. Frank LaCourte, originally drafted by the Braves. Joe McIntosh. There's Randy Sterling. We saw him. I said I don't know who that guy is, but he was drafted in the actual 1969 draft. Well, there he is. He's got a picture. Al Dawson. I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you. Alan Ashby, catcher. We've got Wayne Cage. Al Cowens there, the 1975 card. Pretty cool. Jim Essien. And those awesome old White Sox warm-ups. Those are sweet. Sergio Ferreri for the Tidewater Tides. Some guy named Rudy Hernandez. Pete Mackinnon, one-time manager. Rudy Mioli, shortstop. We got Stan Poppy. We saw him in the second round. Tom Paquette. He'll lead the light on for you. Tony Scott, center fielder, drafted by the Expos. Steve Staggs. He'll throw you a hell of a party. Jim Sundberg, one of the best defensive catchers in the game, and his numbers do not reflect that here. I hope those numbers improve, but he's a draftable catcher. Best defensive catcher, best arm of that era. Gary Atwell, don't know you, or you. John Yeglinski, nope. There's Vic Harris. Pete Kogel in the 1971 card. Which one is Kogel? I guess that's him right there. Gary Wheelock, shown with the Mariners. Some guy named Bob Leslie. Bob Meneely. Bob Polinsky. Get all your Bobs together. Dan Thomas killed himself in jail. John Travis. Steve Dillard, one-time Detroit Tiger. He was a career pinch hitter. Shows him as a second baseman, but he pinch hit a lot. Bruce Kim. He was Mark Fidrich's favorite catcher. Then we have Tom McMillan. Larry Milbourne. He's got a Gold Cup card there for the Astros. That's his rookie card. Mike Potter. Never heard of him, but he had a card in the minors. Orlando Ramirez for the Angels. Like some of these cards, photos are like, Topps photos that weren't used, or maybe photos that were in, the handbooks they would give out at the first game of the year. Chico Ruiz. We've got Rennie Stennett, great second baseman for the Pirates. Rick Albert, Russ Caldarella, Fred Frazier. We're kind of getting to the bottom of the barrel here, but not Doug Konieczny. This is another player. I went to school with his daughter. She was 1 year up in front of me because he was from Detroit. Yeah, went to Notre Dame, right? I can't remember. But from Detroit. Maybe he went to Michigan State. I can't remember. Jim Sadowski. Mike Wallace with the airbrushed hat. That's awesome. Ken Pape. Dave Crisione. Dave Mockimer. We got Dave. All the Daves in a row. Steve Swisher. Swishalicious' father. Nice. Mark Rea. A couple guys you don't know. Pedro Garcia played for the Tigers. Rick Auerbach. Greg Pryor. Dave Campbell, but not the Dave Campbell that was almost traded to us today. Lots of Dave Campbells. Nardi Contreras. Tom Johnson in a quadrant card. That's him right there for the Twins. Jim Otten, a quadrant card that I must have pared down at one point. Edited down. There you go. Mike Overy. Can't spell overreaction without ovaries. Tommy Toms. That's cruel. Why would you do that to somebody? Tom Farias. Bob Grossman. Greg Jaycox. Never made it. Davis May. Ron Mitchell. Butch Stinson. There's Rick Burleson. Why is he so low? Charlie Chant. Dave Cripes. Bucky Dent. Bucky freaking Dent is in the draft. John Doherty. Daryl Jones, Joe Lovito, Keith Marshall, Terry McDermott. Oh, there's Terry McDermott. We saw him in the first round. Joe Nolan, Sam Perlozzo, Ken Wrights, won a Gold Glove, Dave Skaggs, there we go, Jack Bastable, Nathaniel Clayton. I don't think there's too many left, guys. Bill Dancy, Richard Harris, not the actor, Dennis Holmberg, Paul Husband, Joe Crinch. Wow, that's terrible. John McLaren, James Pascarella, Rick Richardson, a bunch of nobodies. Lafayette Currents. That is a real guy. There he is. Brewers' 25th anniversary. And you get yourself a Lafayette Currents card. Jimmy Freeman, right here on the end for the Braves. Mike Johnson. You don't know how many Mike Johnsons there are, man. Sid Monge. We've got Stan Wall, Dan Corder, Randy Hammond, Miller, John Solicki, Leo Foster, Michael Clancy, Lou Beasley. We got to be coming up to the end here. Sly Harvey, Eric Rach, Dave Radchich. I don't know, there's two of those guys. The brothers, Stan Butkus, Bob Reese, Terry Clapp. Some of these names can't be real. Michael Duglock, Robert Gallagher. I mean, these are all just people who did make it. Ray Peters, Mike Bruhert, Luis Gomez, one of the worst hitters of all time. If you have never looked this guy's stats up on Baseball Reference, you got to look it up. John LaRose, Brian Abraham, some guys, other guys. Oh, wait, there was a baseball player named Ludwig Benedetti? Come on. Eric Brown. I know there was because I clicked on all these names and went to their page to check them out for their positioning. Samuel Cece, David Chorley, Clark, Darrow, Del Busto, Bill Hall, but not the Bill Hall, Ben Heisey, Holbert, Magner. Yeah, these are all players who did not make it. Tom Rimma, Mike Seeberger, Weems, blah, blah, blah. Ron McDonald. Ronald McDonald! What? Look at that. What a clown. Dale Phillips, Tom Twellman, Raleigh DeArmas, Jim Lett. Now, some of these guys, like Raleigh DeArmas, I believe he only played in the Mexican League. And so if there were prominent Mexican League players in this era, he included them in the game. That's pretty cool. Jim Lett, Marty Cornejo, Randy Wiles. Wow, look at that uniform on Randy Wiles. That's crazy. Okay, we've got Doug Flynn, another one, a terrible hitter from that era. Bunch of guys. Whoa. We got to be coming around here. Tim Johnson, Luis Quintana, Keith Chauncey, spell Keith like that. Keithel, his real name is Keithel. I mean, parents are horrible. Wilbur Howard, Herb Washington. Herb Washington is the lowest rated player I have ever seen in the game. We have him listed as a DH. He is a dedicated pinch runner. He doesn't have any other skills, it says. This is a very important baseball card to find if you have a collection. The only player I've ever seen as a pinch runner on his card. He's got a speed of 98. He never had an at-bat in the majors. In fact, this baseball card shows him leading off with no one in the stands. Look at all of this. I mean, I want to draft that guy just to have him. That is amazing. So, yeah, there you go. And that's it. We're back to Mike Hargrove. So, I hope that was informative. I hope they thought that was interesting. And a nice trip down memory lane. We did that basically in order of scouting. So, you've seen the top players. I believe we'll have a pick that's 23rd overall. So if we go down 23, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that is roughly 23 players right there. And of course, the game doesn't pick them just in order. It's all random. I would love to get Dave Winfield. I wouldn't mind getting Mike Hargrove, actually. At least we know he gets on base. You can do worse than Dennis Leonard. I certainly would love to get Bill Madlock. If you go below the 23 spot here, I mean, there's Dave Parker. We're definitely getting Dave Parker if he is available to me. Dwight Evans, I'd go Dwight Evans. Cesar Cedeno, pardon me. So, I mean, there's going to be players available to us that will help us in the first round. Beyond that, we're just going to be choosing names out of a hat. And maybe we'll take a chance on one of those no-name minor leaguers that, who knows what their career could be like. So, all right, guys, I hope that was good enough for you. I enjoy doing that just for my own sake, but that was fun for me. That's going to do it for today. We're going to come back tomorrow and play the first day of June, and we're going to keep rolling. The Lions alternate history is over. I'm still prepping for the 1984 Detroit Tigers season replay that's coming up in March. We'll start that. So we need to get on the ball and wrap up this series. And as I said before, there may be some days where we do doubleheaders to try to get through the doldrums of the summer baseball here. Okay, so that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and or subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow.